Hey, this Halloween, Mike and I have Hey, this Halloween I decided to do something I've wanted to do for a really long time. So for quite some time I've been interested in steampunk. I even watched that whole steampunk TV show where they like made rooms and made a bunch of contraptions and stuff. But I didn't know how to make that work with my basic philosophy on life, because steampunk is essentially about a carbon-based economy full of coal, where people burn coal all the time. And I'm like, there's a reason why in the Victorian era they stopped using coal-based contraptions and they stopped using steam engines, and it was because literally you wouldn't be able to breathe right now if that still existed. So, in the spirit of environmentalism, instead of steampunk, I am going to invent pneumatic punk. Like, what if they used air or other kinds of, I don't know, I'm still thinking it through. The point is, today we're going to do a craft project and we are going to make a steampunk style hat, but I'm going to try and reimagine it with some other form of energy that doesn't kill your lungs and people and isn't the reason why the industrial era was shut down. Let's get started!
A lot of people make hats out of foam, but I am lazy, so I bought this $4 hat at the dollar store, and I bought some Rust-Oleum paint, and now as soon as I am finished painting this hat, it will definitely be incredibly flammable, so I would not suggest this method if you are a smoker or like to light matches very close to your hat. I find I work best when I have someone to work with, so I invited a better artist than me to help with this project. Shake the can, move it super far away from the hat because you only want to get a light dusting over this, and then run away if you can. And then, yeah, we just used a really light dusting of this copper colored Rust-Oleum paint over top of the black in little bits at a time to spray paint the hat. I also flipped it over at this point and did the inside of the brim just for the aesthetics. If you're taller than someone, they probably are going to see the underside of your hat, so it's good to be thorough and do both sides. I also went around the bottom of it a little more, trying to get a thicker gold edge because it was trying to stay black. This was useless. I don't recommend doing it. It did absolutely nothing, and it mostly sprayed under the hat rather than on it. Pick up some welding goggles. We lucked out and we found these at Princess Auto. I think they still have some in Mississauga, but they're discontinued. And you just take off, the good thing about these is you can kind of take them apart. So you just take off the lenses and then you can spray them. I have some extra lenses in here. They fit a regular round, you know those sunglasses you can buy, like those 60s hippie sunglasses? You can take those lenses and pop them in here. So we find that really useful because for these goggles, the lenses can be any color. We just sort of replace them with whatever color we want from those hippie glasses. So with these, I'm just going to take them apart, lay them out, and spray them with more of the copper spray paint. Then I'm going to make a horrible mistake, so I am going to tell you what it is and why you shouldn't do it. We sprayed the part that holds the lenses separately because I wanted a thicker layer of paint on these than on the goggles themselves. Also, sometimes a lot of people do them a different color, like they'll do the one part a copper color and they'll do this part a gold color. You might even want to leave these black, like I don't know what you want to do. Here is the horrible mistake I made. Do not do this. My artist friend warned me not to do this while I was doing it. I was like, nah, it'll be fine. It was not fine. It will never be fine. So what I did was I put regular sparkle glue over the spray paint because I had this thought that I wanted these to be sparkly. And what ended up happening later was that the sparkle glue pulled off the spray paint because spray paint dries so quickly. So you don't want to mix spray paint with other paints because yeah, it dries really quickly, and what happens is the other paint just dries and ends up pulling it off. It ended up having a pretty cool weathered look to it, but I definitely would not do it again if I was making another hat or like another pair of goggles. Some pro tips: just pick up your round thing with a paintbrush and then spray it with spray paint. Get that all over your hands. Good thing I was wearing an outfit that I didn't mind getting paint all over. At this point, I had finished the base, so I started doing some research into steampunk style hats. They ranged from super simple to very ornate, and they had a lot of really specific themes like clocks, vials, and that sort of thing, which are common in steampunk. I really wanted the hat that I was going to make to have a theme based, not just in steampunk, but in things that I like, and that I really wanted this to be a character. The more I saw these hats, the more I just started thinking about Hermes, and that kind of became my inspiration. Partly because that's the most steampunk staff I've ever seen in my life, but mostly because the god of thieves, outlaws, and messengers who's capable of traveling through time and space to deliver the mail and such while looking super hot would totally be a steampunk. Before you start questioning the validity of my research, back to the video. A lot of steampunk pieces seem to be made of whatever people have lying around, so I found some pieces that were cut off of old costume jewelry, and I also bought these little gears from Michael's. The idea was to just pull out everything I had that might work for a steampunk theme and see what I could use for this hat. Because the theme was Hermes, I wanted to do little wings like the ones that he has on the side of his helmet. So I had some feathers that had fallen off of an old collar from a dress, and I used those to I found a longer one, slightly shorter one, slightly shorter than that, slightly shorter than that, to form this wing shape. And I have a kind of neat way of putting feathers together that might work for you kind of faster, because I know a lot of people try to glue them down or they try and attach them to a ribbon, and it's not always the most stable. I know this because these fell off of another piece. So I'm going to show you how I use lace ribbon to attach them. Here's a bit of a closer shot of how I put the feathers together to create the wing shape. So here's the short piece of lace ribbon that I cut off. What I did first was I just laid out the feathers. I used the top of the hat, but you can really lay them out anywhere. I laid them out on a flat surface just to get an idea of how I wanted to place them to create the wing shape before I used the ribbon to put them where I wanted them. So I thought I needed 5, actually ended up needing 4. So then what I did was I took this ribbon and I just stuck the feathers through the holes into the lace ribbon. So this one has 2 rows of holes. So I just stuck it through the top hole and through the bottom hole, and I did that with all the feathers. And then I kind of adjusted them a bit, and then I had to find a way to put them on the hat. Now, a lot of people use craft foam, but I actually had some pencil rolls that were overstock from my business, so I have wanted to use these for a while for something. They've got this little map printed on them, and then on the inside they've got a pocket for pencils, which I'm going to use for another project later. So what I had decided to do was actually cut a strip off of this to hold the bottom of the feathers onto the hat and to kind of go along with the steampunk and with the Hermes theme. So I imagined that he would sort of have this little bit of map on his hat, because Hermes is a pretty avid traveler and I mean, he delivers the mail all over the place. So the first thing I did was I ripped out the pocket, and then I just went ahead and cut this into little strips, and then I'm going to attach it to the hat. I think this is going to end up being a fantastic hat for anyone who loves to travel. I did cut out the compass rose as a circle, and I'll probably use it in a different project later. I didn't end up using it in this one. And then I went ahead and cut little strips out so that I could use them in this project, and also in later projects. I saved a lot of the pieces as well. I'm not that great at cutting things straight, so if you make little strips, it'll probably look a lot better. The other thing you can do is you can absolutely just cut strips out of craft foam and then paint them with that same copper paint, but this had like a little map printed on it, and I thought that would look just as cool, if not cooler. So the first thing I do is I take both ends of the, it's not the first thing I do, it's obviously the 93rd thing I've done, but I take both ends of the ribbon and very carefully just hot glue it onto the side of the hat. I am blessed with long nails, so I'm able to use them to push down directly on the hot glue. You might want to use a tool or something else if you don't want to burn your hands. And then I just kind of glued them and adjusted them into position. You can glue down the feathers, but I do find that too much glue and feathers doesn't look that good, so I decided to leave them like this. The lighting was not cooperating with me at all as I used the strip of map printed leather to attach the feathers to the side of the hat. This is the point at which you kind of look at your project and you're like, oh my god, it's all coming together now. It's starting to look like a steampunk hat where it looked like a dollar store hat before. And I started to feel really pleased with this project and just with the idea of completing this project today. You can use grommets or anything else, but I decided to use these little gears to stick it on because I thought that, you know, gears don't have to be practical. They could also be just cute. This was a piece of an old piece of costume jewelry, but it has sort of this map kind of compass rose pattern on it that also has like a moon and sun and stars and that sort of thing. So I used my jeweler's pliers to remove it had like a necklace loop on it. And then I just stuck this on the side of the hat. So my idea was that Hermes would have this mechanism on the side of his hat that allows him to travel through time and space. So this is the space portion. So we've got the map and then we've got this little map piece. And I also think the gears work really well with this because, you know, maybe this map folds down. A lot of people when they're making something like this, they'll stick it on the outside and fold the brim up of a hat. I do find that looks really cute for online or if you're trying to sell it, but it doesn't look as good if you actually want to make a wearable piece. But again, it's just a personal preference to have the brim showing, do what you feel. But one of the feathers was loose, so I did end up having to glue it down, which I'm a little bit sad about because I really wanted them to just be kind of free at this point, as there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be putting on this hat. At this point, I thought the goggles must be dry, so I brought them back in and dumped them down. I want to position the goggles on the hat in order to figure out, look, they're not completely dry, but I wanted to position the goggles on the hat to try and figure out where they would sit so that I don't put any embellishments where the goggles are going to be. This was also sadly the point where I noticed that the other paint had started to take off the spray paint. So rather than go back and spray paint them again and just wait for them to dry again, all I did was I wiped off the additional paint and I wiped off some of the spray paint with it. It gave it a nice weathered look and let some more of the black show through, so I'm not mad at it. But a lot of paint was wasted and did end up peeling off. After reassembling these by screwing them together without the lenses in, because they weren't completely dry, they were kind of tacky dry at this point, I just wrapped them around to see where the strap of the goggles was going to fit on the hat and also how the goggles would look on the hat. This is that point where you can look at your hat and be like, yee, it looks so good, oh my god, I'm so impressed with myself and so proud of my mad skills of making stuff and whatnot. This is also when I place the gears and any other embellishments that I'm going to put on. I just need to know how high I need to put them on the hat so that they go above the strap of the goggles. And then we can go ahead and glue them on. On this side, we are creating the mechanism that allows Hermes to fly through space and get to where he's going. So I added a couple of small gears. Here's an important point. With something like gears that has holes in it, put the glue on the gear, not on the hat, so you don't end up with a lot of glue sticking out everywhere. I still ended up with a lot of glue I had to peel off, but this helped. So I imagined this device to be something that he would use to set where he was going, and then the gears would kind of turn and it would turn on. If you're good at making stuff that actually functions or electronic stuff, you could even make these electronic pieces move, which I think would be at least 50% cooler than what I've done here, but anyway, they're not real gears and real buttons, but at least they're in the right position that I guess they would be in to run such a machine. So when I was finished attaching the spatial regulator movement device, I don't know, to this side, I went over to the other side and attached a little clock and a bunch of other gears. Unfortunately, my camera died while I was filming and I didn't know. I also found a little red bead that I could use, and I sort of incorporated it into the center of the gear here as a power source. So I figured out my power source. It's some sort of jewel or magic or something like that. Wouldn't it be awesome if I were one of those famous YouTubers who people remind them to do things like charge their phone and stuff like that? Couldn't be me. Anyway, my favorite part of this was that little clock button that I created because it looks like you might spin it or push it. I started messing around with some of the other stuff at this point because I felt like the hat was still a bit naked, even with all those gears on it. It didn't look aesthetic enough yet. So I have this other box that's full of jewels and cabochons and stuff. I figured the hat needed something kind of sparkly to kind of break up how plain it was. I honestly thought I had a lot more sparkly cabochons than I do. A lot of these ones were kind of flat black, or I had some gold bells and stuff like that. I had pieces of a picture frame that I ended up messing around with as well. But eventually I decided to not pay attention to where my camera was and work almost completely off camera so that you would have no idea what I was doing. Let's change the zoom function a little bit. Maybe you'll at least be able to see a little bit of what I'm doing. So here I'm just kind of placing jewels and cabochons and deciding where they will look good. And then I found the cutest thing. It was this little, used to be a necklace or something, but it has a filigree heart on it and it's got a bird on the other side. I decided to use my jeweler's pliers to take it apart and see which parts of it I could use. And you know, just for kicks, I also adjusted the camera angle so that you could actually see what I was doing right about now. At first I was gonna use the heart, but then I picked it up again and I saw that bird and I was like, yes. We need something to connect the two sides of this machine. So I realized that if I could kind of hang that bird from one of these gears, so I'm just probably going to glue it in position, but if I could hang this little bird from one of these gears, that it would look really cool. And also it would be part of the mechanism, is if you push the button on the one side, the bird would go flying over to the other side and, you know, hit the button on the other side. So I glued that on. I was really starting to feel happy about the project again because I'd been super stressed by like just how to get the two sides of this to work with each other and how to get it to look good. Like I said, I was originally going to put wings on both sides, and then I decided that would be way too much considering how big this piece already was and just kind of impractical. Originally, I did decide to glue the bird down, but I really didn't like how he looked when he wasn't free falling. So I decided to rip that off and put something else there. I probably would have just left it plain, except there was a big wad of glue underneath it when I pulled it off. So I just put a little more glue on and just kind of stuck one of those black sparkly cabochons there. It looked all right. Wasn't the worst thing I'd ever seen. At this point, the goggles were pretty much dry, and I really wanted to see how it would look with them. The tendency will be that you're going to want to over embellish these hats before you put the goggles on them, because the goggles add so much to them. So I really wanted to make sure that I put them on. So when you're putting these back together, this is actually what I love about these. They fit any round lenses from those hippie glasses that you can buy like on Shein or at the dollar store or anywhere else. So I pulled these blue lenses out of a pair of those round hippie glasses. You can even buy them at costume shops at this time of year. And I threw them into the Welding Goggle lenses, and then I screwed them back on. So it's also really useful if you want to add like a special, like an embellished lens, any sort of gold lace, barbed wire in your eye. Don't put barbed wire in your eye. But anyway, the sky's the limit to what you can replace these with, and I really liked that about them. Particularly since I'm blind as a bat, so if this project was for me or anybody nearsighted, you could also add a prescription lens and actually wear them, and that just seemed nice. This actually fits two lenses. You can see I'm putting in a glass lens and the blue lens. Like, there's a clear lens and the blue lens inside of this. So you would be able to put in your prescription lens and still put a color lens on top of it. So yeah, lots of benefits to buying actual welding goggles for this project. And in this case, they were actually cheaper than to make them out of foam. I also think the ones made out of foam, they don't last as long and they're a bit unwieldy. They can be a bit hard to use. Alrighty, let's put these on the front of the hat and see how it looks now. I hate narrating these videos after filming them because I'm sitting here like, what am I doing at this point? And is it something important? Like, should I cut this part of the video or not? I probably should have cut that part of the video. Oh, I see what I was doing. I was getting a small little gear. Yeah, so the welding goggles have this little button on the side of them, and I didn't want to leave that boring and plain, so I just took a little gear and quickly stuck it on there to make them a little more steampunk than they were. People do go pretty crazy embellishing their goggles, and I definitely might do that in future. I just really wanted this hat to be not plain, but given the fact that the outfit that goes with it is going to have that massive staff and all of those straps across the chest and everything else, I thought that the hat could pretty easily fly into the OTT zone if I wasn't careful. So here I am putting the goggles on the front carefully to avoid wrecking the feathers, and I needed to sort of adjust them just to make sure that they didn't cover any of the details because I had this nice little leather strap on the side. If I had it to do again, I definitely would have moved that leather strap and the side of the feathers up so that the goggles wouldn't interfere with them. I might also have moved the strap of the goggles underneath that, but I did want the goggles in this case. The person I'm making them for wants the goggles to be wearable and able to come off the hat, so I couldn't just make them a permanently fixed aspect of the hat. I know what you're thinking. Can I get a close-up of those details? Yes. Yes, you can. Look upon them. They're glorious. Here I am removing strands of hot glue from the outside of the hat, giving you another close-up of the details and how the paint job turned out, how it looks now that it's dry, and that little dangling bird. I guess all that's left to do now is clean up this gigantic mess. How do I always end up with more junk after making something than I had when I started? I don't get it. All right, my friend, it's time to go up on top of the hat rack and await a cosplay being made to go with you.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you have somehow beat the algorithm and gotten to my channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week and bye!
갑자기 내게 나타나준 너, 난 아무 말도 할 수가 없었지. 첫눈에 반한다는 이야기가 널 보는 순간 이해가 됐어.